There's Brian. Welcome to the channel, and this is going to be a little bit different of a video. As you can tell by the screen behind me there, this is an episode of Dial a Drummer, my podcast I've been doing in my spare time for the last 5 years. We're bringing that podcast to this YouTube channel. Now that YouTube has podcasts on channels, I'm going to migrate a bunch of my content from other channels right here. Speaking of, if you dig this kind of content, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Go ahead and give us a thumbs up so that other people that like this same kind of drum-related content can see that as well. And please hit that bell so you get notifications every time I put a brand new video up. So this video is actually the current episode of my Dial a Drummer podcast. If you'll look under the podcast section on the main page, we're going to start posting all of those podcasts right to this YouTube channel. We're trying to monetize this, get to 1,000 subscribers by the end of August. And so part of doing that is bringing you this. So enjoy this episode of Dial a Drummer with the fabulous drum educator, professional drummer, Pat Petrillo.
Welcome to Dial a Drummer.
Dial a Drummer is brought to you by Session Ace. Whether you're looking for high-quality in-ear monitors, high-resolution studio microphones, or any other sort of thing that you need day-to-day as a musician, either in the studio or on stage, Session Ace provides remarkable tools for musical craftsmen. Find out more at sessionace.com. Hey there, and welcome to Dial a Drummer. I'm your host, Brian Stevens. Thanks so much for tuning in. I really have some great stuff for you this week. If this is your first time to listen to the podcast, please subscribe on Spotify, Apple Music, or whatever podcast app that you prefer to use. And soon, I'm going to start posting these episodes to my YouTube channel as well. You can get there by going to brianstevens.com/YouTube. I've got several different drum and music-related YouTube channels. We're going to be all consolidating those over the next few weeks into that one channel. We'll talk about why in a few weeks. But brianstevens.com/YouTube. Make sure you subscribe. There are some great videos that I've been making for you up there, including an hour-long video that we just put out a couple of weeks ago that's a complete guide to in-ear monitoring. So if you've got any kind of questions about in-ear monitoring for live gigs or in the studio, that video will answer, I would say, 98% of them. So go over there and check it out. Now, if you get a ton of value from this episode, please share it with a friend, a fellow drummer, or if you're a teacher, please share it with your students. I would really, really appreciate it. Now, if you've listened to any of the last several episodes of Dial a Drummer, then you probably already know that I like to take a few minutes at the beginning of the show before we get into our guest to table a topic with you. Now, later you're going to see that topic take shape in some tangible way with my guest for this episode, who this time is the incomparable Pat Petrillo. So all that being said, let's just get right into the show. In 2023 and going forward, we live in a world where you can imagine almost any sort of thing that you'd like to do. With enough effort and time, you can accomplish almost anything that you can imagine, whether you'd like to go out and play gigs, start a private teaching practice, record an album and release it, just like our guest this week has done, or become a YouTuber and make videos that the rest of the world wants to watch. I believe that anything's possible if you're willing to make some sort of plan and take the action steps necessary to follow through on that dream that you've got. Now, to help you with that, I just want to talk for a second and share a 5-step process that you can use today to accomplish almost any goal or any dream that you may have. Now, for some of you, these may not be novel concepts, but if you need some encouragement and you need some direction, I think these 5 steps will help set you in the right direction. Now, the first thing that you want to do is you want to kick things off by getting super clear about what you want. You need clarity. So take a pen and paper and jot down your dream or your goal in 3 to 5 sentences. Make it detailed and vivid. Make it so vivid that it feels real and tangible and exciting. Clarity is the first step to achieving anything that you want to do, whether it's going and getting groceries or recording that album that you've always wanted to record. You first got to get clear about what is it that I'm trying to do. So after you've written down those 3 to 5 sentences, you've really boiled it down to a succinct, inspiring description of what you want to accomplish. Then you want to see about pulling together some case studies. Now that seems like a very academic thing, but let's tap into this treasure trove of information that you've got out there. If you hop on Google or dive into YouTube, or maybe just in your locale, find people who've already done what you're dreaming of. You can assemble at least 3 case studies of folks who've really nailed it. You'll be amazed at what you can learn from someone else's journey. And you can use it as fuel to encourage you to take that next step. So whatever that goal is, if you'll just go into Google, if you'll just go into YouTube, if you'll begin to search for some people, some information, the web is full of stories of people who have probably done something very similar to what you would like to do. And what you want to do is really drill down on those people who have been successful and who have taken a lot of the same steps that you're going to need to go on this journey yourself. And once you've assembled those case studies, you've got some really good stories and really clear examples of people who have successfully done something similar. You might want to get a consultation, talk with someone who you know has been successful in doing what you want to do. It could be someone from your case studies or someone that you can easily establish some contact with and have a conversation with, either in person or virtually through Zoom or Skype. The great thing about the internet is you can pretty much get directly in contact with almost anyone that you may want to talk to. I know a few years ago when I went out to LA, I wanted to really see how J.R. Robinson operated in this new world out of his home studio. And so I just reached out to him and, for what was essentially a private lesson fee, I just paid him what he would normally make for a half a day in the studio. And I was able to sit with him and really pick his brain about how he's transitioned from a session musician that used to spend every day in the big commercial studios of LA, but now spends the majority of his time in his own home studio, making some incredible records, doing some drum tracks for some of the who's who of the music business. And that consultation really did help me to level up the things that I do here in my own home studio. To see someone who's that masterful at their craft, to see them in the environment where they do the majority of their work, it really opened my eyes to a lot of possibilities. And it helped me to streamline and improve a lot of the stuff that I was doing in my own facility. Now, when you find someone like that, you can really dive deep with them to find some of the pitfalls or the obstacles that you're likely to encounter, and you can get some ideas for how you might be able to avoid them or sidestep them, or at least minimize the effect of those things. You can get a clear picture of the entire process that you'll need to go through to get from where you are to where you want to be with that dream or that goal. For me, sitting with guys like J.R. Robinson and Nick Buda and guys that are doing the kind of thing that I want to do at a much higher level allowed me to see exactly what is it that these guys do that makes them the best of the best. I know experiences like that have really helped shape my business. It has helped improve my workflow. It's helped me to really improve the quality of the work that I do. So get a consultation and really if you want to get the most valuable information, don't call up someone who's incredibly successful and say, hey, can I take you to coffee and pick your brain? Really find out what is an hour's worth of their time, or 2 hours worth of their time, or a half day's worth of their time. What is that really cost? And provide that person with that direct monetary value. Show them how much you value their expertise and the knowledge and experience that they can share with you. Now, after you've done that third step, after you've gotten your case studies, you've done some consultations, now you're ready to begin putting a game plan together. It's time to put your thinking cap on. You don't have to have all of this figured out from the start, but you do need a game plan. So we're going to start by listing some initial steps that you can take to kickstart your dream. Think of this like you're building the skeleton or the girder framework for your project, for your goal, for your dream. And as I said, you don't have to know every single step that you need to do from beginning to end, but by beginning to put some kind of game plan together, you can make this whole thing a lot more tangible and doable and concrete. It's not just some pie in the sky thing that you're thinking about doing. You actually begin to see some things that you can begin to do to head in the direction that you want to go. And once I've got some kind of basic framework together, I've got some action steps that I know that I can take pretty immediately to help move in the direction I'd like to go. Then I start to ask myself, is there one game-changing action that I can take that'll make a whole lot of these other steps a lot easier? Is there one thing that you can do that will take care of 3 or 5 or even 10 steps on your game plan? Will that one decision or that one action step pretty much make the next 5 to 10 completely unnecessary? It'll help you streamline your process, and it may actually help you get to the goal a lot faster. Now, speaking of getting to the goal faster, is there one person that you can hire or you can contract out or otherwise just get to help you that could possibly make your process shorter or easier or less expensive in the long run? I've got a friend of mine that I had a conversation with just yesterday that I've got a new group that I'm doing some work with that I need to get a promo video done, and I need to get some dates booked in the Southeast for this act. And by making one call, having one conversation with a friend of mine who had access to not only several different bookers for different venues, but he also would be able to get me a gig in a place that actually had all of the production, all the cameras, all the things that I would need to book a live show with real ticket buying customers and shoot the promo video at the same time. So instead of going through tons of different steps to do 2 or 3 things, to book a gig, to put together a new promo video, to find someone to shoot it, to find someone to record it, to find a way to pay for it. Instead of having to go through all those steps, by having one conversation, I was able to immediately step into the conversation I needed to have to get a gig booked at a venue that had a built-in audience that would love this music. And then we could immediately get in, shoot a live concert video that we could use for promo that would make it a lot easier to just start booking dates in those similar kinds of rooms. We could very easily show people the money with the kind of promo video that's high impact, that really shows talent buyers and booking agents what they're getting for their money. And I'll back up for just a second. Once you've got that framework in place and you've asked yourself, what are some things that I need to do? What are some areas that I need to explore and some processes I need to put in place? Some conversations that I need to have to move toward the goal that I have. It could be a little bit overwhelming, especially if you already are able to put together a pretty detailed plan. It's easy to look at that plan and feel overwhelmed, like there's so many things to do and so many things to pay for and so many steps to go through. The thing that you'll want to do next is you'll want to find the one thing that you can do today, by the end of today, that will help you gain some momentum and move forward with your plan. Now, in business, there's a thing called a minimum viable product. And so instead of fully actualizing your entire dream, your entire goal, you might want to create a smaller version of it just as a test drive. I did this sort of thing with Session Ace and the in-ear monitors. With version 1 of our EST dual drivers, instead of going out and spending tens of thousands of dollars on research and development and product and marketing and all these different things, I contracted out a factory that made the thing that I wanted for myself. And for a few $1,000s, I was able to prototype the exact ear monitor that I wanted for myself at the time. In fact, I'm wearing them right now as I'm recording this podcast for you. And after I made something that I was really happy with, I was able to get that same factory just to make 50 of the in-ear monitors that I thought that other people might like as well. So instead of ordering 1,000 or 5,000 or 10,000 of these things and really going big out of pocket, I went with this minimum viable product. And I took it directly to the audience of people who were already engaging with the content that I was producing and some of the other products that I was helping to bring to their attention. And I just offered it up to that audience and sold those 50 in-ear monitors and got a ton of feedback, no pun intended, a ton of feedback and comments from those first 50 consumers that bought version 1 of those in-ear monitors. And then we were able to really gauge, is there a demand for this product at this price point? Are there people that need this thing that I needed for myself? I mean, I know I needed a particular kind of in-ear monitor that sounded the way that I wanted it to sound, and it gave me the kind of quality that I wasn't getting from much more expensive products. But I didn't really know if that was something that everybody would want. So that first 50 was my minimum viable product. Those first 50 units not only let me know if there would be a demand for it, it also let me know how I needed to improve the product before I did sink a significant amount of money into that one project, that one goal. And from there, we improved the product. We made something better than the minimum viable product. Once I saw there was a demand, those 50 went in like the first week, I think. Then I was able to go back to the factory and say, well, can we do a run with these improvements and with the branded packaging and all the things that you would need for a commercially viable product? Can we just do 500 of them? So that first production run that we did, now it's been, 7 years ago, we just did 500 of those. And so I was able to step into this bigger goal that I had for a company like Session Ace and go step by step at a time and see at each step of the way, is this something that it's worth continuing to pursue? Maybe you want to do a podcast or a video lesson website. Instead of going through all the steps that you'd need to put together some huge production like that, maybe make a single episode of your podcast that you'd like to hear, or make a single video lesson on a particular topic that you can put on a YouTube channel. If you want to have your own album, instead of going through all the steps to do an incredible, huge 14-song release that's on vinyl and CD and on all the streaming platforms, fully produce one song and release it through Spotify and Apple Music or any of those platforms using a service like CD Baby or DistroKid or TuneCore. Use that one song as your litmus test for, is this worth blowing up into an entire album? Is this something that I'm going to want to do start to finish for another 13 or 14 songs? Is this a process that I feel like is going to net the result that I want, which is a fully produced album that people can buy and or stream all over the world? If you've got a band concept that you have in mind, instead of going through all of those steps to put the band together and put a whole 2-hour show or 3-hour show together and to shoot promo videos and do websites and all of the things that you would need to do to fully launch this band concept, think about minimum viable product. Maybe you assemble your musicians and your singers and you rehearse them a few times and just learn a handful of songs. And then go out to an open mic night or a jam session and play that handful of songs in front of a live audience. And that way you'll get some idea, is this concept something that people are going to want to go and see and go and listen to and engage? Talk with the booker at that particular place where you're doing the jam session or the open mic night and get a feel for, is this music, is this band concept, is this group of people the kind of thing that talent booker may want to book and actually pay money for. So instead of going through all of the steps to fully actualize the thing that you'll want by creating this minimum viable product for your particular dream, it'll let you know if it's really worth investing your time, your effort, and your resources in. It'll let you know, did you enjoy the process of building this thing that you've had in your imagination? And also, do the results of your test drive lead you to believe that you can carry out the full plan with some reasonable amount of success? Or by going through and developing that minimum viable product, should you pivot and do something else completely different instead? That minimum viable product may actually show you a completely new pathway that you need to go that's going to be much more successful and much more satisfying. So take a look at those 5 steps. Get clarity. Number 2, do some work to get some case studies together. Number 3, actually go a higher level of engagement and get a consultation on your dream with someone who's already been there, already done something similar. Once you do those, then put together a game plan of some sort where you've got a series of steps and things that you know you need to do to head in the direction of your goal or your dream. And then once you have that game plan, take a first step. You don't have to go all the way to the end to fully engage the dream that you have. Take a first step, something that you can do today to gain some momentum and begin to work towards that minimum viable product so that you can really test out and test drive this idea to see if it's worth doing. So let's talk with someone who's done the exact same things that we've been talking about so far. My guest today is Pat Petrillo. Now, Pat is a world-renowned drummer, educator, and product inventor. Now, as a working professional drummer, he's backed a wide variety of artists from many genres, including Patti LaBelle, Gloria Gaynor, and he's also played in numerous Broadway shows like A Chorus Line, Grease, Footloose, and Dreamgirls. We're also going to talk about his history with drum instructional videos, and more recently, he's the author of the book and DVD package, Hands, Grooves, and Fills, that's currently being distributed by Hudson Music. Pat's also, because of the album that we're going to talk about, been recently featured as the cover artist for the February 2023 issue of Modern Drummer magazine. Pat's group, the Big Rhythm Band, has released their newest album, The Power Station Sessions, on Autumn Hill Records, and it features an all-star lineup of guest musicians, including Nile Rodgers from Chic, David Bowie, and a ton of other albums that I'm sure you've listened to. John Popper from Blues Traveler, Felicia Collins from the Late Night with David Letterman band, and guitarist Oz Noy. This is actually Pat's second album. His previous release, the Abbey Road Sessions, was recorded at the legendary Abbey Road Studio 2 and is available on Amazon.com. So let's get into this conversation that was originally recorded the week that Pat's album came out back in October. This is part 1 of a 2-hour conversation that I had with Pat for my Amazon Amp show, Drum Corner Radio. We're going to talk about the making of the Power Station Sessions album, and we're going to play some tracks for you from this amazing, amazing record. So without any other preamble, here's the one, the only, the fabulous Pat Petrillo. All All right, all right. If you thought the last few weeks of Drum Corner Radio were great, you're going to be knocked out this week because my special guest is the one and only Pat Petrillo. Pat, come on into the show. Tell everybody hello.
What's up, Drum Corner Radio? How's everybody doing? Thanks for having me.
Man, I appreciate you taking the time to come and talk with me. You've got a very good reason to come on the show and talk because you've got a new album out.
I do have a new album out, but I just want to come talk to you. I mean, it's not, who cares about the album? I'm here to talk to you. No, you know.
For people that don't know who Pat Petrillo is, I'll tell everybody the very first drum video I ever bought. Now, we got to put this in context, Pat. You got to realize in 1987, drum videos were few and far between. Right now, you can't sling a dead cat without hitting a drum video.
Yep, that's true.
The entire internet is overloaded with drum videos. But in 1987, there were not very many.
Yeah, I think Snare Drum Rudiments was one of DCI Music Video, Rob Wallace and Paul Siegel, which is now Hudson Music. At the time, there was the two Steve Gadd ones. I think the Steve Smith, mine, maybe one or two others, but Snare Drum Rudiments was, I don't know how that's possible. I was only 10 years old back then. How is that possible? No, but I was a puppy. Yeah, I was right out of college. I was a young kid, but I basically was working and teaching at Drummers Collective. I have a large drum corps background. I was in a few drum corps, but most notably the Bayonne Bridgemen. I think most people would know we were drum corps drumline champions in the early 80s. And so he, Rob Wallace knew I knew my rudiments really well. He goes, "Hey, you want to make a video?" I said, "Sure. Okay, talk to you tomorrow. Bye." Okay.
That's it.
And that was it, man. I like 2 weeks later, I'm down at NFL Films down in South Jersey and, just played through, a half an hour. It was like, okay, we got to get them all in a half an hour. I was like, oh, wow. Okay. That's it. Can only be a half an hour VHS, 10 pounds of shit in a 5-pound bag. And, here we go. It sold, I can't even tell you, thousands and thousands of copies. It was one of the top selling DCI music videos.
Well, the thing that was different about it was, you had the Steve Gadd videos that were out. Probably the earliest one was the Yogi Horton one that they did. It was basically just a masterclass that they filmed and put out. It was, I think the copy I have is one of the first copies, and it doesn't even have a picture on the front. It's just like black and white type. It looks like somebody photocopied it and stuck it in the case, that kind of thing.
That's what they probably did. Absolutely.
And then, the Steve Smith ones started to approach education, but there were still performances and there was still some edutainment in there.
Edutainment, Smith was out, and then mine came out. I think the second one came out after that. So I think the Louis Bellson one was out, which is still great to this day. Anybody wants to watch Louis Bellson. But yeah, so that's my early beginnings, that's for sure.
Yeah, it was one of the first pure educational videos. Like the whole thing was just that. It was Pat showing you how to play these rudiments. And I was in 10th grade, and some of those rudiments I hadn't even heard the names of, and to have someone show them to me. Yeah, I'd never heard of some of those things. To have somebody show them to me, it was really an eye-opening experience. It was almost like having a private teacher at your beck and call anytime you needed something.
That opened it up, and you sit there and, watch them and learn them. I think I might have left like 3 off, like the 17 and the 11 or and the 15 maybe, were played in a similar fashion because we only had so much time,
Right.
And so we had to get it all in there. And at the end, I said, well, let me play a little drum set because we want to show people, how you can apply some of this stuff. So. Yeah.
If you look on YouTube, you can find there's bootleg copies of it on YouTube if you want to see Pat.
And get my 4 cents now. Come on.
Mustache in the fro.
Mustache in the fro.
A young Pat Petrillo.
Yeah. I haven't aged too much. Just a little.
Yeah, just not a little. We all do, though. And then since then, you've played a lot of gigs, whether it's Gloria Gaynor or some of these other great gigs that you've played. I mean, you've been a working musician. That's one of the hallmarks, I think, of you as an educator, unlike, especially in this era when anybody can instantly open an Instagram account or a YouTube account and just start, quote unquote, teaching.
Showing licks.
Mm-hmm. You have been a working player.
Yeah, I mean, I went to school for music education and performance. So I have my master's in music ed, but I played in all the ensembles in college. I went to Morehead State University in Kentucky. I'm from here in Jersey, but I went to school down there. Great percussion program. So I always knew I was going to play and teach my whole career. That was just, I didn't want to just be a one-trick pony. I wanted to expand everything that I could about percussion, but also how to teach, how to interact with people, and, how to get a message across. And there's so many intangible things that going to college helped me do. And so when I got back home, I dove into meeting people and playing and networking. And I joined up at Drummers Collective, straight away. I came home and I had a brochure sent to my house from Drummers Collective on 14th Street. I was like, what is this place? And it had all these cool classes on all these different things and, studio drumming, Afro-Cuban rhythms for drum set. And I was like, I got to go here, man, So I just kept my drum set thing going and started studying at Drummers Collective and networking from there and meeting other, drummers, but other musicians in the New York scene, and started doing some Broadway stuff.
As you've been playing gigs and you've been teaching lessons, you've taught the collective as well, like being a working player teacher. You and I finally met when you came to Atlanta to film some lessons. That was early 2000s. It had to have been like 2003, 2004-ish, somewhere in that time period.
Yep.
That's when I actually got to meet you. And that was a great experience to get to see you play. I've always said that you can only learn so much from someone at a distance, whether it's listening to their recordings or seeing them on video, or even going and sitting at the back of a room of a masterclass. There's only so much you can learn. It's not until you can get 3 feet away from someone, the doors really open. And for me, when I got to see you play, to stand there in the room, kind of helping out with audio for the videos that you were recording, it was my first chance to be in the room with you and hear the sound that you made before the mics, before the processing, before all the science. What did the drums and cymbals sound like in the room? And it was a real educational experience for me.
Thank you, brother. Thank you, man. I appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, getting up on, on somebody's personal space when they're drumming, and you can feel the air, one thing you can't do on video these days, hear the dynamics a lot better. You can see and feel the touch of how somebody plays. And so as I started doing like Broadway stuff and subs for the original A Chorus Line on Broadway, and I subbed a lot of different shows for a lot of drummers. I did Chorus Line, I did Grease, I did a national tour, Dreamgirls, I did Footloose, I did Newsies, I've done a bunch of different Broadway things. And that's all from my Drummers Collective experience. And then I started meeting other musicians, not just in New York, but in Philly, and met this guy, Ed Hamilton, guitar player from Philly, who I did a bunch of records with. And then I met percussionist Jose Rossi, who was in Weather Report out of Philly. And he was in the band with Victor and Omar, actually, that incarnation of Weather Report. Yeah. But he was also Patti LaBelle's percussionist. Okay. So we played a bunch of gigs. And then when that chair opened up, he recommended me, and I got that audition and got that gig for a bit. So yeah, playing with different genres has always kind of been a strength of mine. I mean, because I listen to a lot of different kinds of music too, So that filters into talking about your record that you've made now, because stylistically, this new album that you've got out that just came out last week called the Power Station Sessions, it really covers a lot of ground stylistically. I feel like I'm hearing a lot of funk. There's definitely the funk influence going on in this record. And the flunk influence too.
The flunk influence. There's a lot of funk in there, a lot of just greasy kind of, it runs the gamut as far as funk, because there's some greasy stuff, but then there's some tracks that are really precise, like the precision of your playing. Even when things are flying by, the precision is just so spot on. Can we play one of these tunes so we can give people an idea of where we can start? And then we'll kind of go through and we'll talk about all these different places that the record goes.
Yeah, it definitely is a diverse record, and so many reviews are coming in, and they listen to the whole thing and they go, when you first see a record and you listen to it and you see all these different kinds of styles of groove music, and you go, how's this going to work? But it does. It all works together.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just came out last week, and it's now streaming on every platform, whether it's iTunes, Amazon, Deezer, everything. It's out there on everything. And we printed some vinyl.
I just picked up my vinyl copy over the weekend.
Yes, and you can get it. The vinyl is starting to get into stores, but you can order it at patpdrummer.com. That's my website. You can get a signed, autographed one and a T-shirt. You can get whatever you want. Pat P. Drummer, and that's my Instagram handle too. Pat P drummer. So I just kind of made it very easy for everybody to find me.
Same everywhere.
Well, yeah, let's listen to a track.
All right, this is the very first track on the record, 48th Street. Before we talk about it at all, let's just play it. So right here on AMP, on Drum Corner Radio, this is 48th Street off the Power Station Sessions with Pat Petrillo. So that's 48th Street. That's the lead track on the new Power Station Sessions album from Pat Petrillo's Big Rhythm Band. Pat, that pretty much announces Pat Petrillo's here with his band.
Yeah, we said, well, if you took the chance to get this record, you're in for some fun.
Oh, yeah.
I wrote this track specifically with Niall in mind, because such an influential songwriter, groove songwriter who's finally starting to get his due, but through the 80s, all the tracks he wrote for, Madonna and the production with Bowie and this and that. All the stuff, plus the Chic records are great with Tony Thompson, the late, great Tony Thompson on drums and Bernard Edwards on bass. And his rhythm is just, what tells the story of the Power Station more than Chic in the 80s?
Right.
Recording those songs there. So I said, well, here we go. We got to go back to the roots of it. So, he was gracious enough to do it. And I co-wrote this sort of with my buddy Chris Fisher, and great keyboard player down in Baltimore. And we just went back and forth with some changes, some ideas. And then if you listen, once you get the record, you guys, and you listen to it, there's a lot of different sections in the track. It's not just an ABA form, man. It's got a bridge, it's got a little disco-y thing at the end. And, Lenny Pickett's blowing a little bit on it at the end. Give a little New York vibe. But I wrote it with him in mind. I had to hear that stanky rhythm guitar on there, man.
Oh, yeah.
So it's just to hear him in your headphones when you're when you're playing, it's like, oh man, that's him. Yep, that's him.
It's kind of hard not to fall into a very specific kind of pocket. I would imagine when you play with somebody like a Nile Rodgers, because his pocket has got to be so strong that when you lock up with it, it's got to be like a revelation.
It is, but the great thing about Nile is, we gave him the chart, so he it's a very rhythmic thing, in terms of the hits in the beginning. So the drum groove and what I came up with was sort of like the impetus of what he was going to play. So he just kind of instinctively, just as he was listening and playing, he knew where the holes were and where to fill it in.
Big ears.
And still making the changes, as they say,
Yeah. And that guitar solo, dude, it's one of those where that kind of playing, it may not be what you necessarily associate with Nile. I mean, you associate him with the groove. You may not associate licks and being able to really stretch.
No, he can play. He grew up listening to jazz and all that. He's a great player and just an even better human, Yeah, so that's a real fun bumping track, and we'll have a video release of that. We're kind of holding that back. It's the first track on the record, but it's not the first single released to radio. So we're going to let the record kind of slow roll out here this first month and get traction, and then we're going to drop the video for this in November. It's going to be very slick, very cool.
Oh, very cool.
Very cool. So the first single is this record is so diverse. We did a ballad. It's one of my favorite artists other than the Beatles, which we're going to talk about, I'm sure. But, as I was growing up, Stevie Wonder, he's right up to me, right up there with Paul McCartney, in terms of great songwriters, So one of my favorite is Knocks Me Off My Feet.
And that closes the record out. And it's funny you say that's going to be a single? Yeah?
It's a single now. So it's on Smooth Jazz Radio now. We turned it into a smooth jazz, sort of groovy, sax lead kind of thing. Just a straight up R&B right now, but people would consider it smooth jazz. It's an R&B ballad.
I had no idea that's your single. My very first note after listening to the tune, when I went through the album, I just wrote down, the first time I wrote down my first impressions. I kid you not, this is the first sentence of my impressions after listening to that. The radio hit of the album is exactly what I wrote down. It is tailor-made for jazz radio.
Oh, you mean Knocks Me Off My Feet?
Yeah, Knocks Me Off My Feet is tailor-made for jazz radio. It's like you just served up the best that they could ever possibly want to get.
It's the smooth jazz thing it's just R&B, really. It's just R&B, and a lot of it's programmed. You don't hear live drums anymore, So I wanted to go with sort of a Crusaders kind of vibe,
Oh, very much so.
With that, and without, because smooth jazz radio can be picky, man. I can remember when smooth jazz first came out, and I was playing with that cat Ed Hamilton, and we were on Telarc Records, and remember, we come back, and Ed called me up. He goes, "Man, the label says the snare is too loud, and we don't like this, and drums are too loud, and drums are too much." And it's like, man, please, just put a fucking drum machine on it and be done with it already if you want. I'm over this shit.
Yeah.
I'm not going in there and recutting this for them. I said, I don't care, Ed, do what you want to do. If you need to replace it with a drum machine, be my guest. I'm not, and to let radio people tell a label they're not going to play it because the fucking snare drum's too loud. I mean, these days too, it's the same way. It's like, got to be in that sound. If you listen to Watercolors, and it's a great station. At least there's a home to play music to a degree, right?
Sure.
This kind of music. But, you listen to track after track after track. It's like everybody's using the same brush snare sound.
Yep. It's very homogenized, very homogenized.
Man, it's like, come on, people, there's life outside of the damn elevator. Let's go. Come on.
Well, the thing I love about that track, knocks me off my feet specifically, is the reinterpretation of the groove is great. I think, wasn't it Raymond Pounds that played drums on this originally?
Yeah.
And so Raymond has a very, very clear way of playing. The way that he plays, you can just draw a thread through almost every track he's ever played on, because he has a way of just conceptualizing the groove that you did a really good job of paying homage to that while still putting your own stamp, especially the hi-hat stuff that you were doing.
And it's a little Motowny as well, so it's got to have that almost like a, mother, that tune. What is that?
Oh, the Marvin Gaye tune.
Marvin Gaye tune.
What's
so it's
going
got
on?
That same kind of vibe. What's going on? It's got that kind of, tom backbeat with the snare in there,
Yep.
Just to fatten it up a little bit. So, I'm a really homage drummer. I mean, not that I'm trying to copy anybody, but with Ringo, or we also did Black Cow. So, I got to kind of cover a Paul Humphrey vibe, but make it my own. But definitely, they created good stuff. We did Big Man on Mulberry Street. Liberty DeVito's groove was phenomenal. And I'll tell you a story about that one. But so I copped his groove, and then I changed it up a little bit as well. So yeah, but it's on Smooth Jazz Radio. It's getting out there. If you listen to that genre on any of the stations, if you got a station in your area, please request it.
Definitely. You mentioned the Big Man on Mulberry Street, which for people that aren't deep into music, the musicology of the last 40 or 50 years, some of these tunes they may not know. Like that's most people when they think of Billy Joel, that's not a tune that they think of. That's a tune, that's a deep cut for a real fan of Billy Joel music. So that one could pretty much pass them by if they'd never heard it before. It opens with that almost like a TV big band kind of feel, and then it goes into this really great shuffle.
Well, that's Liberty, man. I mean, so I was talking, here's the story about this is I always love that, I love that track, and I love how, Liberty he swings his tail off. But, Liberty told me that Billy asked him to play a big band rock and roll. And that's what Liberty did, Yeah. But he played that cool back shuffle, man, because he was up, I got drums sitting right here, man. Let me just jump behind these drums. I'll use my hot rods here, so But Liberty's groove is this is it, This is what he played, and it's he's got that, It's a great groove, man.
That's amazing, yeah.
So it's like, I'm not fucking with that. I mean, that's fire, man. I'm not doing nothing with that. I gotta play that.
Of course.
And then then we did it when we came back around again. I broke it down into a halftime thing, and then I did a straight blues shuffle, like a jazz shuffle, and then Oz Noy is on this track. And if you guys don't know Oz Noy, I'm sure you probably do. Great guitar player, New York cat, just killing. He played a great solo, so I kind of just even did a little bembe groove over it on the bell with a backbeat. So it just took it in a few different places. It's just a great tune to begin with. So everybody just is kind of like, wow, it's not jazz, but it's funky jazz, it's rock jazz. It's.
Yeah, it's definitely it's rock band meets jazz for sure. Jazz big band for sure. Tell me this: if I'm right about this, I may be wrong, but I may be right. Speaking of Billy Joel,
see what you did there, brother. I like that.
Originally, when they cut that track, didn't they cut Liberty's drums there at the power station, right?
Yes.
So there's the thread to the power station sessions.
Yes, that's another reason why I did that. So my common thread is Niles Sheik recorded at the power station. Billy Joel recorded this cut in particular at the power station. That is the thread. So check this out. Telling Liberty, and he goes, well, which studio are you in? I was like, I'm in Studio C. He goes, get the fuck out of here. This is Brooklyn. Get the
Yeah.
fuck out of here. And I was like, yeah. He goes, that's where we cut that's where we cut it at, in Studio C.
Wow.
I was like, no way. And I said, I got Roy Hendrickson to engineer the whole record. And Roy's been around forever. He goes, no way. I said, yep. He goes, Roy was an young assistant engineer on that session.
Get out of town.
Man, I'm not lying to you. And I did not know that. And he goes, man, I can remember. And even Roy was, first of all, Roy, I think maybe it was Roy told me that first. And then I hit up Liberty and he said, yes, we did do it there. And then Liberty told me he was up on a riser. They actually put him up on a riser, got him up off the floor. I don't know why, for whatever reason, because that room sounds great. But anyway, so the dude who actually assisted engineered, he was he's just the tech. I'm sure he set up the mics or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Engineered my session to do the same track. So that's the synergy that's coming together on this thing,
That's your signpost to let you know that all signs point north. You're heading in the right direction.
Absolutely.
My
it's
goodness.
Synergy.
Man,
Synergy.
That's awesome. That's awesome. We said before, there's all kinds of feels on this record. You've got that rock big band thing with Big Man on Mulberry Street. When I was listening to this the first time, I didn't look at titles and I intentionally didn't look up anything about the record. I just wanted to hear it, just purely what was coming out of the speakers.
Yep.
So we get to Asbury Days, and I kid you not, 4 bars in, I'm thinking Southside Johnny, Jersey. This is definitely an homage to the Jukes.
It's I'm from Jersey. I'm from Central Jersey. And I'm easy, I'm a half hour from Asbury Park. So as a kid, I went to all the different Jersey Shore towns, mostly Keansburg, Seaside, Asbury Park, Point Pleasant. So all of those places are literally half hour from me. And all summer, if I'm not teaching or got a session or whatever in my studio, I'm in my car and my ass is on Asbury Park Beach. You know what I mean? And I'm just chilling and I'm just kind of recuperating and getting my battery recharged.
Yeah.
So as I kept writing for the record, and I said I wanted, what other kind of East Coast vibe can I get? I was like, man, I got to do a Jukes vibe, with the Uptown horns and just the Asbury sound, that Springsteen-y kind of thing. So I just worked with my sax player a little bit and we kind of came up with a melody, and then I just wrote some changes around it and came up with a bridge. You've listened to it, you just it's a fun it's just a fun track, and you definitely think of the Jersey Shore and the big horns. And it just makes you want to sit there, put your toes in the sand, have a Mai Tai and chill, It's a party song. It's kind of a party song. So I got to have a guest on all these tracks, right?
Yep. Oh, of course.
The guitar chair is the one that's been rotating with the guests, right? We had Nile Rodgers, then we had Osnoy on Big Man. So on this one, I'm like, I want to get somebody who's a rocker, but who's known to, does this kind of thing. And I've always liked the way Felicia Collins played. She's the guitar player from Letterman's band for many years. So she played the rock and melody guitar that I wrote. So I was happy to have her. And then thinking about who else is kind of from this area that I can get on the record that would make perfect sense.
Sure.
I think, John Popper, man, plays great harp. He would kill us. So I sent him the track and he was, man, I love it. So he blew 2 or 3 passes on a solo, and every one of them was great. It's just hard to find what solo we're going to use, He sounded great. So it's got a little interlude with me and him, a little solo.
Yep.
Like an 8-bar breakdown kind of thing, and then he takes it home. So it's really just a fun song.
Like Nile, like Oz, like so many people, he's got such an identifiable sound without looking at track credits at all. From the first 2 bars, I'm like, that's flipping John Popper.
Yeah.
There's just a sound that he brings, and you're stacking it on top of this other thing that's super familiar, that Asbury Jukes Springsteen-y kind of, that really sunny Jersey Beach vibe. And then you stack Popper on top of it. It's a total party at that point.
Yeah, it's fun. It's a fun track. So
I gotta ask you, the sample at the beginning, where did you get that sample from?
I don't want to get in trouble now. No, it's public domain, I'm pretty sure. So what it is the Asbury Park itself has such a rich history, great. And then in the 70s, not so great, but it's come back, to a great extent. They finally revitalized the beach. They brought some more sand in, and they really have done with the old buildings. No more rides, but they've turned them into really Art Deco pieces. Carousel is really like an art gallery now. They have some performances in there.
For people that don't know, there's an audio clip at the beginning of the Asbury Days that sort of sets the tone.
It's from the 50s. It's from the 50s,
Yeah.
60s-ish, yeah. So I said, man, I want to get a little nostalgic, and I wish I could find something that would introduce the track of Asbury Park that was,
Yeah.
And I just scoured YouTube, and it had a video up there about the history of the Jersey Shore. And I think it was made, it was a film, that somebody put up on, that digitized it and put up on YouTube.
It's like those old films that we used to see in school. They'd cart out the film projector.
Yeah.
It's that kind of old film. Yeah.
Yeah, and I said, well, there it is. So I was in the studio with my engineer, and I said, okay, we got to grab this. And we cut it up into a couple different pieces, and it had some really cool music playing underneath it. I think I'm going to have to play it for you so you can, you can probably hear it through my lav mic here. I'll just play the intro for you. Ready?
Yeah.
The road leads you to popular Asbury Park. This famous beach has been a favorite of holiday throngs since the turn of the century. There's fun, too, along the sun-drenched boardwalk. Rides and games for the youngsters.
Yeah, and then we're off and running.
Yeah. It totally sets the stage for it, and I'm already there, like in my mind as I'm listening. By the time the horns come in, I'm there. I'm in Jersey.
It should be a commercial for Asbury Park.
Definitely, the Chamber of Commerce needs to make sure that you get a
man.
cut. That's awesome.
I get paid somehow.
Yeah, definitely. So we get into that gear. We started in this really funky, real tight, swinging kind of thing, and then we go to this New Jersey beachy Asbury thing, and then all of a sudden you drop running, and it goes a completely different. From the note that I wrote down was 70s fusion jazz on a completely different level. And that tune moves through so many things. What was the impetus for putting together that tune?
Well, it's an Earth, Wind & Fire cover, man. And it's just, the original track, it's on the All in All record. So, I mean, Earth, Wind & Fire was my next biggest influence, I think, right from the Beatles to James Brown to Motown to Earth, Wind & Fire to Weather Report to, and the list goes on. Everything Steve Gadd played on. So Earth, Wind & Fire is, there's so many great tunes that would work great with the horn band, right? But this one is one of those ones that does not have lyrics. It's one of those body owls tune that I call it. Body owl, body owl. It's one of their body owl tunes, there's no lyric to it. So those kind of things translate great for a horn band. You could just take the harmonies, rip them, and put them in the horns, and reorchestrate, and off you go. It sounds like the record. So, Fred White played on so many great things. And those of you who know a little bit about Earth, Wind & Fire, you may have some Faces or All in All or I Am or Power Light or any of those. But if you don't have Gratitude, which is the live record from 75, I want to say, something like that, you ain't never heard Earth, Wind & Fire.
Right.
I mean, because that's Earth, Wind & Fire at their peak live, like smacking you in the mouth with fusion, funk, jazz, Africano medley. I mean, all of that stuff. So such a big influence. I wore that record out, man. And you get to hear the beauty of their musicianship in the live record. The studio stuff's produced. It's good. It's great, slick. Great voicings, great horn. But man, when you hear that stuff live and all the horn licks. So anyway, Running was always a favorite. So I wanted to pay homage to that, up the groove a little bit, give the tempo a little bit. But then it has a little bit of Latin flavor, goes into like a samba thing, which they did a lot of. And then towards the end, if you guys know the song, the original, it fades out and they get into this conversation and they're talking amongst each other, and then the groove kicks back in, but that boom, boom. And then it finishes out the song. So I was like, all right, well, one of the things people say is you need to have more drum solo on your record. This is you. That they said this about the first record. It's like, you don't really drum solo. I said, I don't really like the drum solo because I like tunes. I will if I have to, but I want to play to the music. So I said, well, if there's anything that would be great for a drum solo, it's this track, because there's a dead space right at the end. We fade out just like it does on the record, and then I play a drum solo. And, when I was rehearsing the band, because we cut this live, as we did most of the stuff, I was like, listen, guys, I'm probably going to do a couple drum solos. I may punch in, I may whatever. So you don't have to worry about me bringing you back in, because we're going to just do that as another take. You know what I mean? Oh, yeah, okay. So we get up to the drum solo, man, and I just kept playing, and I kept playing, and I kept playing, and it just all came out in one take. So when I kicked the band back in and I clicked the sticks, and they were like surprised a little bit, like, okay, well, this is it. Okay, we're going. That was one take, and I have video proof of it. There was no editing in this. There is no editing in this drum solo.
No smoke and mirrors.
I have the video, and we're going to drop the video in the November issue of Modern Drummer, because I'm going to be in Modern Drummer next month.
Oh, very cool.
Which reminds me, I have to find the freaking video. Okay, make a note to self.
Make a note to self. Well, while you're making a note, let's play this tune. We're talking about this tune and telling people about it. They can actually hear it. Let's play this. This is running off of the Pat Petrillo Big Rhythm Band album, The Power Station Sessions. It's 7 minutes of nothing but fire. Here we go. That's the fabulous Pat Petrillo. I hope you enjoyed the first half of our conversation, and I hope you enjoyed hearing some of the songs from this album, the Power Station Sessions. I did an interesting thing where I actually pulled all of our samples from the vinyl. So if it sounds extra good in your ears, I really think the vinyl version is even better. The mix is even richer and has more depth to it than what's on Spotify and Apple Music. So feel free to go and stream it, but I think you'll enjoy it even more if you'll swing by his website and pick up a copy of the Power Station Sessions. If you got a ton of value out of this, please share it with a friend. If you haven't already, subscribe to the podcast on Spotify, Apple Music, or whatever your favorite app is of choice. And you can also subscribe to my YouTube channel, brianstevens.com/YouTube, where we're going to start to post these episodes. And some of the new ones are actually going to have video with them as well, so you can see these wonderful guests as we talk. We'll be back next week with part 2 of my conversation with Pat. We're going to go through, he's going to tell more stories about the making of the Power Station Session album, and we're going to play more tunes. So until next time, be awesome to yourself, awesome to everybody else. And until next time, I'll see you when I see you.